Got Paul Gofigan. They posted something on their Instagram that I saw the other day, or it's yesterday, and it was from 4 years ago, and it was a picture of them waving the Guam flag in Turkey. Really cool pic. That's all. Thank you. It's 7:03. Good morning. This is the Link Pacific Points. Cabo Enterprises, IT&E, and Jack in the Box. Well, we're in PCOR 3, but everything is wide open as there are no more capacity limits. The only real restriction in place, other than the temp checks and all that stuff, is the mask mandate. And with that being said, I know that this was a quick pivot that we took, and some people are still trying to figure out what has changed and what has not. And so we wanted to bring on Father Paul Gofigan, who's the chair of the Archdiocese's liturgical committee. Father Paul, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Good morning, Chris. Good morning, Sabrina. Good morning, Jason. Good morning, Guam.
Good morning, Guam. Well. From closing down churches during the height of the pandemic lockdown to now seeing capacity limits removed, I want to say we've come a long way, Father Paul.
We did, yeah.
My mom couldn't believe it because she was in Kansas during the lockdown, and I was explaining to her how the churches were closed and no one could go to church, and she just was like, "What? Are you serious?" And I was like, "Yeah, Mom, it was a huge deal. Like, yeah, they made the Santa Maria Common do like a motorcade around the island because people couldn't go to church." Obviously, that's changed, and now we're in this situation where people are kind of wondering, Paulie, is it just 100% wide open, and what's the status of masses? First, we'll start with that.
Okay. Weeks ago, the clergy got into our weekly meeting, and we discussed and anticipated this day when the restrictions will be lifted. So the Liturgical Commission recommended that we proceed with caution, to always remember that not everyone has been vaccinated, and we also need to protect our brothers and sisters who are not vaccinated. So with that said, we highly recommended that the safety protocols still be followed as far as the sanitizing of hands as you enter the church, the sanitizing of the church after the services, the wearing of masks, very important. Although that was there was a bone of contention a few weeks back because of what CDC issued regarding the wearing of masks isn't necessary. But I think just for the protection of others, we highly recommended that the wearing of masks still be implemented as you enter into the church for services. The only thing that we did not keep was the social distancing. We allowed according with the pastor's discretion to remove the dividers or the ropes that they had within the church so that we can have more capacity within the church for services for Sunday masses itself. There's still no holy water. The other things that we still implemented was a sign of peace. Again, we need to remind ourselves that the exchanging of the sign of peace is an option in the Roman Missal, and so we opted to just say that just wish peace to everyone. And if I know that some parishes are exchanging peace with each other. Of course, it's a nice thing to do, but just remember that when you go out to Holy Communion, please, up to you, if you by chance touch someone's hand, please make sure you sanitize your hands before you receive communion. But as far as other rituals are concerned, some people were asking about funerals. There's one thing that the Liturgical Commission were discussing even before COVID hit, was the viewing of the deceased in the church space, in the worship space, and we were leaning more towards stopping the viewing of the loved ones in the church space, and to allow the people to go to the funeral homes to view their loved ones, since they already paid for that service. And then COVID hit, and it was, I guess, by divine providence that happened, because that's when we had to implement that protocol, that no more viewings inside the church space. And the reason why we did this, Chris, was because the church is reverential, it's sacred, And when we have viewings, and I know everybody knows this, when we have viewings inside the church, it tends to become like a social hall. And even worse, some people will bring the food into the churches. So to maintain the reverence within the worship space, we are recommending that we not have viewings inside the church, but to have it at continue to have it at the funeral homes, and if possible, the last option would, if the church has a parish hall, to have the church modify their parish hall to make it look like a funeral home, so the viewings can happen there, and then simply process the body over to the church for the mass. If we discussed this in the clergy meeting, if what happens if a church doesn't have a parish hall and they cannot use the funeral home, then the recommendation is go to the closest church near you with a parish hall, because the parishes around Guam are divided into what we call vicariates. These are little clusters of parishes that are there to help each other in times of need. And so in each vicariate, each parish should really, if a parish doesn't have a parish hall, the neighboring parish should open their doors to them if the family would like to have their viewings in the parish hall. And we do realize that this can be a problem for a lot of people, especially for those who are far away from the cemetery. Jigo is an example. We're far north. Umatic and Mauricio and Iran, they're far south. So perhaps the pastors can take this to heart and have compassion for the people who would like to have the viewings on church property, not inside the church, but maybe in a parish hall.
That's a big change.
Baptisms are to be done. The protocol for baptism is still the same. Baptisms are to be done on one by one. We cannot have group baptisms yet until this virus has been eradicated. But that is still in place. Weddings, again, at the discretion of the pastor. As far as the wearing of masks is concerned, most of the time weddings are within the same family or the same group. So what we decided is to, as we get into a new normal, we're still in P-Core 3, but pretty much it's P-Core 4. So, we were trying to encourage pastors to begin to establish the new normals in their own parishes at their discretion, keeping in mind the protocols that are pretty much still in place.
I wanted to ask about, we're still waiting for the RISE payments. PUA is going to end next month. And we've kind of had these conversations in the past regarding the mental health and spiritual health of our faithful community. Are you guys still getting those kinds of concerns from residents?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that question?
The mental health and spiritual health of the community. Are you still getting those kinds of concerns?
Oh yes. And we make ourselves available. Our offices, especially in the pandemic, has not been 100%, but we make ourselves available to counsel those who need counseling. I know that I've given my phone number out. People have contacted me, so we're still available for people, especially for confessions. I would highly recommend that our faithful, sometimes if you make an appointed time to go to confession, you can also use it if there's not a line, but to make an appointment with your pastor or priest to go to confession and get some kind of spiritual encouragement also.
Polly, I wanted to go back to the no more public viewing. Is this effective immediately?
Yes, it is.
And then, so maybe you could just walk me through the process. So when we have a funeral mass, the deceased will be in the coffin in the church, but would the casket be closed?
Yes, this is what is happening right now. In fact, today I have a funeral. So in the morning, usually the viewing is over at the funeral home, and it's usually at 9 a.m. So I will travel to the funeral home to open the casket and bless the body so the viewing can take place. Once the viewing is over, the body will be processed over to the church, will be greeted at the front door, and the casket is closed because the viewing has already happened. The casket will be closed, the casket will be blessed and processed into the church immediately for the Mass.
We did have a question. We'll get to that. What about families who have had their loved ones who were cremated during the lockdown? Some of these families haven't had a proper funeral service. What's your advice for them, Father Paul?
My advice is to please see your pastor so that you can bury your loved ones. You know, again, I need to do this reminder to all of our faithful, especially those who are Catholics. You know, in the past, the Catholic Church never really allowed cremation because of the resurrection of the body in the last day. But because of, financial restraints and all that, the Catholic Church now does allow cremation on certain conditions. Number one, that the body really be blessed before the body goes into the crematorium. And once the ashes or the cremains are placed in the urn, the cremains should be buried in the urn. The cremains cannot be scattered all over the ocean or all over the mountain. It has to be buried completely in the urn, into the earth or some kind of columbarium. If you're going to bury at sea, the whole urn with the cremains in it need to be put into the water. It cannot be scattered. These are the conditions that the church has made.
What about last rites at the hospitals? Are we doing those again, Father?
We still have our priests assigned to the hospitals. We have not yet changed that, only because we need to maintain protocol. And again, people are still testing positive. There's some people that are still being hospitalized. So I think that protocol remains. The ministry, as far as the Guam Memorial Hospital, the St. Anthony Church is responsible for answering calls to tend to the patients at Guam Memorial Hospital. As far as GRMC is concerned, the parish at Santa Barbara Church, the priests of Santa Barbara Church are responsible to answer calls to go and give anointing at that hospital.
Wally, do you know if visiting is allowed at the hospital again?
What's that?
Have you heard if visiting is allowed at the hospital, just through your conversation?
The last time I think GMH still does not allow visitors. GRMC, as far as the priest is concerned, GRMC, if the family requests a particular priest, I think they can still go in, but they need to check in at the front desk.
Is there anything else that's changing because of the lifting of restrictions?
The only major thing that was changed really is the social distancing so that we can allow more capacity into the church. And as far as I was talking about funerals and modifying the parish call to mimic a funeral home, the capacity in there it would be the same as in the church worship space, because it is a sort of a place of worship, quote unquote, and it is on the church grounds. So. But we still continue to encourage our people to wear your mask and sanitize your hands, and just use common sense. We're still in this pandemic. We're not out of it completely, and protect each other.
That's a big change with no more viewing in the mass. I mean, it's become part of it. You're right. It is a social. I mean, it sometimes seems like a social gathering because you're lining up to, pay your respects, and you're, oh, hey, and you see someone there, and then you give the chinchuli. But, I mean, it's a big change for our culture, right? A lot of people were holding out thinking that this was something that we were going to go back to after the COVID kind of died down.
Yeah, the church never really allowed, and in my own opinion, it never should have allowed viewings inside the churches itself. The actual viewing should be at the homes or in a funeral home, but I believe it allowed viewings inside the church in the early 80s, early to mid 80s, and so pretty much what we're trying to do is go back to what we're supposed to be doing, as far as the norm is. But viewings inside the church is not really a norm. It's really, I think in the 80s, I think it was supposed to be an exception. And sometimes when we have exceptions, we need to be very careful that it doesn't become the norm right away.
Which is what happened. Okay. I got you. Okay, Father Paul.
Okay?
Okay.
Thank you.
Good, Bree.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
You have a wonderful day.
You too, Polly.
God bless.
That's that.
Thank you.
That's
God bless.
that, Joe. Father Paul Gofigan, 7:18. Let's take a quick break, and we're coming back with Melanie Brennan from CPS DYA next, right here on the link. Good morning.
We're on